So next up, we have another exciting panel. This one is titled From Combat to Creators, Consumer Use Cases Taking DLT Mainstream. So this panel includes panelists that are experts on the topic of what will bring Web3 mass adoption from a consumer standpoint. So please welcome to the stage David Wachsman and his panelists.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I don't want to put a damper on all the excitement here, but I will say this. You might leave feeling, how do I put this, a little bit lost from at the end of this panel. We have two of the world experts who have been making use of Hedera's DLT technology and integrated it into their own applications. And they've got some lessons for us and maybe some harsh truths about where we are today when it comes to consumer crypto. So first I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Solo, starting with you.
What's up, guys? My name is Ceesay, CEO and co-founder of Calaxy, proud builder and contributor to the ecosystem for a number of years. Super excited for the conversation today.
Excellent.
I'm Bryan. I'm the founder of Karate Combat. Karate Combat is the world's top striking league, and it's gamified and governed by a token.
Excellent. So both of you have been working with Hedera here, and of course this fantastic HederaCon, which is, and there's no question, Hedera is one of the best technologies that exists out there, and there's more transactions happening on the DLT than anywhere else. But it does seem like even though they've been supporting your projects and you've been making use of their technology, not all that many people are, consumers I should say, are using even your tokens today. Would that be a fair statement, Robert?
Yeah, in our case it's particularly interesting if you don't have the background of Karate Combat. Essentially we were a traditional sports league and there was no Web3 component. And 3 years ago we took this big jump and we basically set up a system where prior to each fight, if fans own karate tokens, they can pick a fighter. If he wins, they get more tokens, and if he loses, you don't lose anything. We're calling it up-only gaming. And if you look at our audience from combat sports, I mean, I would say,
I mean, up-only gambling sounds fantastic.
Yep. And people always ask where the tokens come from. We've set aside tokens in advance to pay off the winners. So it really is a free upside, and we're using it as customer acquisition. We already had a lot of fans. The question is, how do you get a traditional fan to be a hardcore fan? And this was a great system. People are researching the fighters. Before people would ask us about an event, now everyone's asking us, what we think about individual fighters, and it's really helped our fan engagement and a number of other things.
I mean, Robert, I love that idea, so I want to get into kind of why maybe this isn't working in a little bit, but the idea is solid. Like if I was an investor, for example, I would look at that and say, this makes sense to me as something to buy, because I can see why it should be useful. Again, we'll get into some of the roadblocks in a little bit. Solo, you've been building and have made some strategic pivots and have built out perhaps the most consumer-friendly wallet platform that exists. Tell us a little bit about kind of the journey so far for Calaxy, because things have changed since the very beginning, and kind of what made you kind of build what you're building today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, just because building today is a lot different than it was building starting 5 years ago, right? So the things that we were looking to do and the user experiences that we were really trying to apply or use Web3 as a use case to solve real world problems, they're quite ambitious. Like if you think about what you can really do with tokens or a wallet from the real practical sense to an average person without using words that they don't understand and try to explain what you can do today with our technologies, it's shockingly very little, is the honest truth.
It's little that they can do today.
It's little that they can do today that makes sense to the average person.
All right, please, give this audience here a few examples. Like what's something that, again...
When was the last time you used crypto to pay back a friend for anything?
Well, USDC all the time. But as far as other things, it's a little bit more challenging. And even that's challenging, and those friends work in crypto.
Right, that's my point. Like pay a friend back that doesn't every day, or this isn't their life, right? Like the problem is the usability constraints are very difficult, right? And I think the utility or the value proposition of onboarding to our ecosystem and the things you can do with it in terms of the real world problems it solves to the average person, not the people that are here, all the things that made us love this technology don't matter to the people who aren't here.
Okay, so like what? Like what do you mean? Like what do we care about that they don't?
Control of your own data, unfortunately.
Okay.
And I think that's something that...
That's true? Because I know that's been like kind of a meme almost in this industry, that control your own data, sell your own data is one of the principal reasons to be in crypto, no?
Yeah, no, I think so, but I don't think that's clearly, there's not a lot of people who care. That's not enough to get the mass adoption of people to care. Like people would rather trust a big entity to sit there on their data because of the usability constraints because of the usability constraints that come with the technologies that we have, right? There's no alternative for you to sit on your data yourself or custody your own data because the applications aren't quite there yet relative to the tools they can use. A perfect example of this is, when I asked you, when was the last time you used your crypto to pay a friend back for anything, you've probably used Venmo this week.
Sure.
Right? That's my point, is like the user, like we need to get to parity with where technology is. And I think that requires a sobering outlook, and it requires this entire community to challenge and really build for those archetypes and not the people that fell in love with it.
All right,
already.
so I want to define those archetypes that you just said. That's a super important phrase. Robert, you're thinking about demographics all the time. You've built a phenomenal business, a truly phenomenal business, and you mentioned something when we were doing the prep call that I found particularly interesting. Your core audience, and please tell me if I'm wrong here, is mostly 18 to 34-year-old men. All over the world, about 1/3 you mentioned in the US, and then the others distributed around the world, and that correlates pretty damn neatly with crypto users.
Yeah, if you think about the Venn diagrams of people who watch combat sports, people who do sports betting, once again, we're not sports betting, but the utility is quite similar. And then you look at Web3 users, those Venn diagrams are all stacked perfectly on top of each other. But what we found was, when we launched our token and tried to incorporate our core audience, I would say under 5% of them, even though they're the perfect demographic, under 5% even have a wallet. And
under 5% of these 18 to 34-year-olds who, for example, many of them might like sports gambling, have wallets today.
Yes, and
this is a sobering revelation.
Yep, and we can tell by all the comments. Once again, we were going from all sports fans. At first they were quite confused. What are these crypto bros doing? This is ridiculous. This is a combat sports league. What does it have to do with Web3? And then now, what we've found is a lot of them are using it, the traditional sports fans. However, most of the users, I would still say, were Web3 native and came over from that side. Mm-hmm. Now that the product is finally there, we're looking to convert. We're doing a big push to now convert the traditional sports fans. Now that we have, really easy app that's just extremely basic and extremely easy to use.
How long did it take you to build something that's extremely basic and extremely easy to use?
So for us, it was about, so what we're doing is quite simple, right? We're moving to staking, but originally it's just a snapshot, and we have a really, really thin wallet in the app. So we want complete ease of use. You can log into the app, you can vote on different things regarding the league, the rule set, and you can do
for example, how long a round is? So
for instance, we didn't used to have elbows. So what happens
As
is,
in like that?
Yeah. So
to me, I'm dead. Anyway.
Yeah. So my colleague President Awesome, went on, made a video. George St. Pierre commented on it, and then everyone thought about it online, and it passed through with like 70%.
Okay, this is really cool. This is a good reason to use token. Okay.
Yeah. But also it is pretty simple. We're just talking about basic voting. So we took all these basic tools that had been around from DeFi and just put those tools together. And it was still a pretty decent investment, and over a year and a half. And a lot of it was just, getting the process, getting ease of use in a very seamless process. Web3 guys will sit and figure it out. Traditional sports fan, as soon as he's confused, he's just done.
They're hyper ADD.
Yes.
And they're going to move on. They're just not used to that. Solo, you've been quite literally professionally doing this. That is to say, focusing on making things as simple as possible. Can you give the audience here an example of something that either a process or a tool that you've made simpler and how that works?
Yeah, I think when you think about what we've been trying to build and what Calaxy essentially is it's a social verse where crypto wallets and people actually can move assets on chain as easy as a text message. Like my co-founder Spencer spoke before, and he always used to say this, even 5 years ago, was that until blockchain and all that stuff can, and all of these digital assets can move with the fluidity of our regular world, it's going to be very tough for that archetype that you're talking about, the ADD person that's not really interested in, reading Hedera's white paper to understand why they should use this consumer application.
You shouldn't
They're
need
so
to access
far,
GitHub.
Yeah, right. They're so far away from it, and the problem is there's a little bit of a not an elitist, but there's people in crypto have a chip on their shoulders. Like a lot of us have been called crazy for all too many times, and there's a little bit of a pride that comes with it of understanding how it works around here, which is not really good for the mass adoption play. If you really think about it, there's too many people who think, oh well, this guy just trades meme coins, and we look down on that, or we look down on varying levels of education here, which is you don't need any education to use any good tech products today. Those are the best products, right? And so I think for us, it's really, like I said, challenging your products, and the best design is invisible, like where it needs to be, as it had been said earlier.
The best design is invisible. I really like that. And so it seems like the priorities for many of the people in this industry have been wrong. Because I kind of want to also make the claim that we as an industry need you guys to be incredibly successful. And the reason we do is because as wonderful as the infrastructure is, it's only as valuable as the things that are built on top of it in the long run. Else it's just speculation. We need to see, again, Hedera has more transactions on the network than anybody else, but we need to see even more. And for that to work, we need to see applications making use of that technology. And right now, both of you gentlemen who are entrepreneurs in the space that have been in the field trying to sell your product have seen there's roadblocks to consumer adoption, and that they're material roadblocks.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to even add at that point too is, if you think about the entirety of Web3 and how big the ecosystem has gotten to relative to the amount of consumer success that it's had outside of Bitcoin, and some narrowly defined use cases, stablecoins as well, which I think people should really spend a lot of time understanding that, because I think that's a huge part of where this cycle is going, and a huge part of the usability constraint is actually stablecoins. Finding a way to bridge the gaps between on-chain and the traditional world of finance looks like stablecoins, which a lot of times people don't really like to hear because they're afraid of the concept of a government entity getting into the business of issuing sound money, et cetera. It's not really that. The dollar already exists. This is another way to make it more ubiquitous, borderless.
I want to speak to this a little bit. The religiosity of OG crypto people is that we don't want government interference. We don't want centralized player interference. It almost seems to me antithetical for there to be consumer adoption, mass consumer adoption, while still maintaining that fierce, I'm going to call it again, religiosity. It's the fervor that decentralized is the most important thing in the world. I mean, Karate Combat's not a decentralized company. You may have built some technology in Web3, right? But you're a real company, aren't you?
We're a real company, however, we're still pretty decentralized. Our employees are spread pretty evenly worldwide. It's actually set up, I would say, as a hybrid of what you would think of a traditional sports league and how a lot of purely on-chain Web3 projects work.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is this. You don't have people coming to the stands and buying tickets in a decentralized way. Right? They're coming to an actual physical venue, an actual centralized venue of some sort, and they have a centralized type experience that they love. Right? Your fans love you. You have incredibly great in-person fan engagement, and your Web 2 audience, they love you. Seems like Web 3 people are a little bit more fickle so far, is what I'm trying to say, and it might be simply because of the experience. It's not quite as fluid yet. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think it's also, a bit of education. I think people are, what we're doing is extremely new, and I think when it works, I think it's an incredible application, so I think when it works, it's going to take off bigger than we thought. We've actually seen pretty good adoption. We have hundreds of thousands of people, that are doing up-only gaming now, but it's definitely been while it's working, a lot of the users I think have confusion over, what is actually going on behind the scenes. How do they get from, something our government's forum to a vote to all these other sort of Web3 processes that a traditional sports fan doesn't know. So the biggest thing for us is education, and then it goes the other way in the Web3 world. I think we get put in line with these fan tokens. What we do is completely different.
That's not how fan token works at all, what you've described.
Yeah. And we think there's huge confusion in the Web3 market. I don't think they're looking at our white paper either, to be honest. Fan tokens, you have very small control, very small fan gated experiences. With us, the token is the most important aspect of the entire league. And when you look at our FTV versus where our competitors trade in terms of traditional financing, a lot of our competitors that are behind us trade at massively different valuations. So I think it's pretty clear.
And you think that delta between where your FTV is and where your competitors' valuations are is principally an education gap problem?
I think it's education gap, and I think when you look at say it's a speculative equity, those things can trade anywhere. Web3 can be even more volatile. Then you take something that's in Web3, that's the first application of its kind, that has this a whole bunch of things that haven't done before. It can go way up and way down. And I think you're also seeing a lot of volatility combined with some misunderstanding of what the actual value of the token is in the traditional Web3 crowd.
Solo, talk to us about education. Again, this is something that you've also been harping on, I'd say, for years. But as Robert mentions, there's two different types of education at least. The people that are currently in market in crypto, and then all those who aren't.
Yeah, I think for us, you guys bring up good points, because I think the biggest issues, even as an industry, is I think taking a step back is, I think we've all over-indexed on the same things and the wrong things. Like, both of those things are true.
The same things and the wrong things.
Yeah, I think crypto, and I think if you think about the history of the entirety of our industry and the problems that it's really solving, hyperinflation is real, right? We all know this. We're all feeling it today. And Bitcoin is a really good use of blockchain technology to try and solve something
eggs
like
are
that.
very expensive today in dollars, but not so
Bitcoin.
Expensive in Bitcoin.
Bingo, right? And I think that we've all indexed on that because it created life-changing outcomes to certain people. And I think you've seen that with the speculative nature of the ecosystem. I think the concept of on-chain trading, transparency, all these things, made for it to be a really, really great speculative ecosystem. And I think that invited a certain type of builder and a certain type of entrepreneur to the ecosystem. People are a necessary component into a lot of people's projects. I'm not going to say everyone is over-indexing on, we got to make FU money, right? That, and out the box, out the gates, which leads to the the ecosystem that we have. Whereas I think when you see other emerging markets,
where meme coins, for example, are being sniped early, screwing over consumers, and probably destroying any goodwill that might have existed?
100%, exactly. Whereas I think other industries, other ecosystems, AI, I think the quality of founders, I was talking about it with my team, super strong. I think a lot of junk out there, obviously, but I think we need quality builders to really understand the essence of what DLT technologies can be. I think for us, our next chapter is really thinking about, indexing on things people haven't really looked to solve, like the concept of ownership. Can you own a community? Something of intangible value, can you really own that community? Right now, in our industry and with creators, you build these massive audiences, but all that means is that 1 million people click the button next to your name, right? But do you own that? Do you actually own that?
Definitely
you control
not
that,
right now.
Right?
If you have a million YouTube subscribers or Spotify subscribers, again, you certainly don't own that at all.
Correct, and you got to be liked by those platforms, and you're continually chasing the rabbit, or chasing you're in this little rabbit hole, or you're chasing this cyclical downward spiral to pleasing these platforms to make a livelihood. TikTok getting banned was a huge sobering wake-up call to the point that, I think with this foundational DLT technologies, can you take these technologies and surface and package them in products that help solve real-world issues? For us, that's the creator economy. So thinking about ownership, owning a community, being able to monetize that community, not being worried about being deplatformed for your community is really what we're thinking about. Giving the power of DLT and surfacing the benefits while keeping all of the noise underneath the hood.
So we'll talk a little bit about the power of DLT and consumer. Robert, again, you're an entrepreneur that's firmly in this space. Yes, also Web 2, but firmly in this space. What advice would you give a new founder? Maybe one of these audience members out here is going to start a company. Maybe one of the venture capital firms here is going to go and fund that company. What advice would you give to someone who wants to build a consumer application that making use of DLT technology?
Well, the one thing I would say is I think what you've seen is a lot of it has been a big money grab. Whether it's some sort of NFT project, everyone knows what we've seen a lot of these traditional businesses like ourselves do. What we did was much different. We've gone fully native in Web3. It's core to everything we do at the Sports League. However, I think when you make that decision to what extent you're going to involve Web3 as a consumer business, I wouldn't think of it as some money slide, as some sort of huge, horn of plenty and money and higher valuations and all of that. I think it makes sense if the utility, like what we do with the utility of the token, what it allows us to do, I think that makes sense. If it makes sense without hoping for any other upside, then I think it's worth it. I don't think you should plan on getting huge portions of the Web3 community.
So they need to be thinking about it from an audience perspective, not from a I can raise funds perspective, or my valuation will increase because I'm making use of this tech.
Exactly.
Better utility.
Super simple, go back to the basics. Solve real problems. Solve real problems. If your only problem you're trying to solve is making money for yourself, we're not going to be in this industry very long, right? I think it's the concept of going back to the basics, build real businesses, solve real problems for end users using the technology. You build a product using DLT technology because it needs to use it to deliver that product. Don't find a way to use, Steve Jobs always used to say this, don't find a way to sell tech to consumers, right? You really got to work from the consumer and get back to the tech, right? Don't over-index on what we have and what we think. The market is telling us that we have an adoption issue. 5% of people are using this stuff.
I mean, that's
the sobering reality.
It's harrowing. Yeah, it's harrowing. But
we need more.
We're applauding that 5%.
We need more. We need more.
So I'm not even kidding. I'm asking you to volunteer yourselves to mentor some of these companies. I think you really should. You are two of the people on earth most qualified, and I hope there's a way. I'm happy to help you guys. But I think that these lessons, the lessons that you've learned, all the sweat equity essentially you've put into building real consumer applications for DLT, I hope these lessons can be passed along to some of these new entrepreneurs. Would you volunteer? Would you agree to spend some time doing this?
Yeah, go to the Karate Combat Discord. Our whole company's on there. You got a lot of traditional sports sponsorship guys that don't know anything about Web3, but we're all on there. It's an open forum, and yeah, if anyone pings me, happy to loop up with them and give them any advice.
I mean, the education component here is huge. I think we kind of just discussed that a little bit today, but I think that could be its own full panel on how we go and educate just consumers, let alone the whole Web3 audience, and making them understand what's behind the token, which certainly isn't enough. But even on the consumer side, I don't think we as an industry do a very good job at explaining the basic mechanics, how to open up a wallet, what transactions look like, what confirmations mean, if that even needs to be stated at all.
Well, I think the way we got around that is if a traditional sports fan goes on the Karate Combat app, I mean, he doesn't even know it's powered by Web3. He just knows he has these, tokens and he can get more and he can use his tokens to do certain things. We made the wallet creation really simple, and I think for consumer application, the best way is to do what we do. Make it really simple, integrate it all yourself so they have a seamless, start to finish experience.
So is it fair to say, at least for now, crypto should be both useful and invisible to consumers?
Agreed. The best products always are. The best design is one that you can't see, right?
There we go. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this panel.
Thank you. Pleasure.